right, welcome back. It is the Built by Vitality podcast. My name is Steve Pinkerton, and as always, I am next to my mom's favorite co-host,
Philip Lewis.
And I am excited. Today we have Tracy Davenport, who has a lot in common with Philip. She also has a PhD and doctorate in human growth and development, along with a master's in psychology. So now I feel like you've got someone that you can really...
Now I can relate to somebody besides you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been holding them back for a while.
Yep.
So I ran into Tracy. It's funny how connections are made, but I ran into Tracy because Laura is engaged to Brooke, who is Tracy's son. So when Tracy came up here, I don't even know how we started talking about it, but I'm sure I was running my mouth about something about, my kids driving me crazy with sleep. And she's like, oh, well, I actually do a lot with sleep. And
or
I'm
you
like,
just woke up from a nap.
Yeah, one of the two. And we started talking, and I was like, oh my gosh. And she sent me some of her talks that she had done in the past. I said, well, we're doing this the next time she's up. And this is that next time. So Tracy, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm very, very happy to have you on here. I sent Tracy a list of about 74 things that I want to talk about. So we're gonna narrow these down, and hopefully by tomorrow morning. Are you coaching in the morning?
No.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah, we're
good.
planning this right.
Tracy, will you talk a little bit about your background and how you got into the human growth and development is very interesting, but then how you really got into the sleep side of it, which I am fascinated with.
Yeah, so thank you for being here. I'm excited to be in Charlotte and, make a connection with you. You guys, this gym is so important to Brooke, obviously. And it's neat as a mom to see such a great place for one of your kids. So my story is a little bit unique. I was very interested in performance across the lifespan. So that's what I do. People from 0 to 117, we see how science can be used to help them achieve their best. And the way I got into sleep is my mother, just over 8 years ago, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And that's a special club that you don't want to be in, what you watch happen. And as I did research, my area of expertise was in disease and disability in school. And as I watched what was happening to my mom, I researched more and more about Alzheimer's and found that sleep played a big role in Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is what we call a garbage collection problem, in that we see a connection with people with Alzheimer's with excess protein plaque deposits on their brain. And what we know about sleep is at nighttime is a time to clear out those protein plaque deposits. So we see what we call a bidirectional influence with Alzheimer's disease and sleep, and that people that don't sleep as well are more likely to have Alzheimer's, and people with Alzheimer's are more likely not to sleep as well. So when I understood the power of sleep, it was the same time that my kids, my own children, were, probably 10 and 16, maybe a little bit younger, and I just panicked. I absolutely panicked because on the one hand, I had young teenagers, and on the other hand, I had a mom in a lockdown facility, which if you haven't spent a lot of time in there, I don't advise it. It's tough business, as my brother would say. So I began having to implement some of the things I knew in my own household, and then that turned into my mom settled, and she passed in May, but I was very involved in her care. And that turned into understanding disease and disability and the framework around performance with people with disease. I understood how that translated to performance in terms of athleticism. I was a 4-year D2 athlete. My husband was a coach and also coached with the U.S. Olympic team. So, sports ran through us. So I was able to take what I knew from disease and disability and apply it to performance-based ideas. So I started talking to Division I athletic teams, everybody, women's basketball, men's basketball, lacrosse, baseball, about how they could take their performance to the next step. And secretly, that's what they wanted to know, but what I wanted to do was prevent them from getting Alzheimer's when they were older. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got into it.
It's really interesting, especially because you can take it from one end of the spectrum and then apply that to your children who are in a completely different stage
Yeah.
life cycle, but you have you have that vision, the forethought to see if we continue to go down the same path, then this is the result we're going to get out of it.
Yeah, so just to go back to Alzheimer's briefly, so everyone understands the importance of this podcast. By the year 2050, we're looking at Alzheimer's disease to double in this country. You know, many diseases like cancer, for example, are decreasing, but we're not slowing Alzheimer's. We're not curing Alzheimer's. The train's getting ready to go really fast. We're looking to this disease to double by 2050. You know, 1 in 4 of us are already in a caregiving situation, and this isn't going to get any better. So we have an opportunity here with a very simple tool that science is already very aware of. So we can make a difference here, and this is real in our lives. I'm 58, and this is going to get even more real in 10 and 20 years. So if you think that this isn't a possibility for your life, I'd rethink it, you know, because if you're sitting in a room with 8 people, 1 out of 8 of you will have Alzheimer's. And so, statistically speaking, so this is coming down the track. And, you know, if you love your children enough, we know a lot about this now. We've got tools that we can slow this disease, and depression, anxiety, we'll talk about that. So I'm over the top passionate about it because I think we have the information now. We just need to apply it.
I agree, and I think that more people have to be screaming this from the rooftops because we'll get into the kids' side of this in a second, but it's just not something. I was telling my older brother, both my brothers are cops back in Michigan, and I told both of them, I said, you know, in the next 3 or 4 years, people are going to wake up and realize how vital a role sleep plays. And I think back to my days in the Marine Corps where, you know, the impact of sleep was so important into what we did because of reaction, because of our cognitive ability. And I said to my brothers who they both end up taking these calls at all hours of the night. Their sleep schedule is completely ruined. And you know, one of the first questions I have for you comes from the conversations I have with those 2 guys. If you're working out 2, 3, 4 times a week, and you're getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep, which I don't think is a stretch to say that there's a lot of people that are only getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep.
There's a lot of people. So when I go to do a talk at a team, that's one of the first things I do is anonymously canvass them for how many hours of sleep they're getting. And the young people are getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep overall. There's a couple outliers there, but that's about the range, 4 to 6 for our young people.
So that was the first red flag that went up. And then I'm telling them, I said, hey, Andrew, you know, listen, you have a occupation to where your reaction time, your cognitive ability and to react to things is directly related to your job. And he'll get up at 3:45, 4 o'clock in the morning to go work out. And I kind of have this argument with him every once in a while where I'm like, man, maybe you should just sleep in and skip the gym. What do you tell people? But then I look at the membership here, and I think we have a big subsection of clients here that fall in that same category. Now they're not in law enforcement per se, so that they're the consequences are a little bit different, but the same kind of 4 to 6 hours of sleep, and they're coming in and grinding for 3 times a week for working out.
Yeah.
Do you think that the risk versus reward there makes sense?
Yes, I'd like to answer that, you know, in 2 different ways. One for the shift workers, I'll get to that in a minute because that's got a lot of good information that a lot of people can use. But you know, training, movement, everything that you're doing here is key to health. You know, it's awesome. There are 2 things that researchers don't argue about. One is smoking and one is exercise. Nobody's going to argue, and researchers argue about everything, but they don't argue about those 2 things. That being said, sleep deprivation, we're talking about bodily systems. We're talking about diabetes, cognitive decline, heart disease, premature death. So we're really talking about apples and oranges when we're talking about exercising and sleep. Sleep is like, that's a planet, and, an apple is an apple. It's big, it's huge, it's life or death, where if you're not sleeping, you could die. If you're not exercising, you might be overweight, you might not feel as well, your energy might not be as high. I'm not knocking exercise. It's incredibly important to a healthy life. But when we're talking about sleep, we're talking about a much bigger picture that we need to understand in terms of everything that's happening during that time. And one of the things I tell my student athletes, and I'd like to say this at the end, but in case anybody's feeling depressed right now, just getting started, the podcast, my work is in performance enhancement. None of this is meant to be punitive. I'm going to help people get to the next level, and I'm telling you how to do it. So I'm not shaming anybody. I'm not taking their life away. I'm helping them get to the next step. When you talk about your brother, I have a saying that really helps me a lot with my own sleep, because we all have those nights, right? Like before I fly, like I did today, I'm doing like a pre-flight check all night long, like I'm flying the plane the next day. I can't explain it. But we all have those nights, right? But I have a saying that maybe it'll help people. Your relationship with sleep is just like any relationship. It takes respect, maintenance, communication, and clarity. And the reason I like to think of it as a relationship is that we're all going to have a bad night, one or two, or maybe a bad week if you're sick, for example. But if we're constantly taking advantage of that relationship, no good's going to come from any relationship that you're treating that way, right? So your older brother is a perfect example of this scenario. He's, a cop. He's on shift work, just like a nurse is. And shift workers in this country, first of all, thank you. Thank you to the police officers and the nurses and the Amazon workers and the truck drivers that are doing this for us and keeping our economy going, because shift workers are at an incredible disadvantage in this country. They're at a huge disadvantage to their health. We've looked at tens of thousands of night and shift workers and found that working night and evening shifts have increased all causes of death, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia. Now, that doesn't mean that your brother is doomed. What that does mean is that he has to do everything within his power to combat these negative forces on his health. And sleep is key. And I applaud him. If he wants to work out at 4 a.m., man, go for it. But you've got to be in bed at 9, right? Or you've got to be in bed at 8:30, wherever your window is. The saying, I don't want to be flip on any of this, because people's lives are real and people are struggling right now in so many different ways. But we all got the same 24, right? We all got the same 24. And if you want to work out at 4 o'clock and have this job, then you have to be to bed early. And I tell my college athletes that I work with is that a good night's sleep comes with a well-planned day. Mm-hmm. So I applaud your brother, but he has to do even a little more than the average bear, because the numbers aren't in his favor. Mm-hmm. We know that. So,
and I think that's tough for people too, as you hear. I'm sure, Philip hears it too, where people come into the gym and they say, "Man, I just couldn't sleep last night. I had too much stuff going on, and I just didn't have time to go to And I need to be more of a nurturer when it comes to that. I'm just not built that way, where I'm sitting there thinking to myself, there is nothing productive that your brain is doing at 10, 11, midnight, whatever it is. I always look at it as a time management issue versus I can't make time for sleep.
Yeah, so, oh my gosh, I have so much to say. I have so much to say. Let me try to organize my thoughts. So I talk to a lot of young people, and I ask them, the coaches get to sit in the back, and I say, I've talked to thousands, and I ask, what's keeping you up at night? And many of them say anxiety and depression. They don't say homework, a lot of them say Netflix, some say TikTok. A lot of them have false narratives around sleep, and I get to talk to them. I just did a podcast that I can come back and talk to you guys someday about. I just picked 7 of these false narratives that people have around sleep, because we need to give people the tools to deconstruct some of these false narratives and rebuild them in a healthier, supportive way. There are a lot of forces pushing against us not to get a good night's sleep. So we need tools in our box. Our young people need tools in their box. And, we've all heard you need to get a good night's sleep, but I'm trying to take it to the next step and actually help people, because people are struggling, and education this is the first thing we need to do. This is the first thing I do with my coaches. Let's just get everybody educated. Let's talk about Alzheimer's disease. Let's talk about, raising your performance. And then they all look at me. My goal is to get everybody off an alarm clock. I don't use an alarm clock, haven't used one for 10 years. I want people to be off alarm clocks. We're animals, and we don't need alarm clocks. The horses at the end of my lane, they don't use an alarm clock, and they're pretty much getting up every day. Mm-hmm. We are animals and don't need that. We have a clock in our head. We know how to do this, but we're letting too many things get in the way that aren't supporting us, I told you I have a lot to say about that.
No, it's very interesting to hear it from someone other than me that constantly talks about this. But I think for me, it hit home. My daughter is now 13. She pretty much thinks that
she's not going to like me after today.
She might not. She probably won't like me more. She's like, don't talk about me on the podcast. I said, okay, honey.
Well, we respect you, and we're cheering for you.
But, I saw the difference 9 years ago, when I added a 25-minute nap to my day every day for the last 8 years. I go to bed at 8:25 or 8:30. Everything I do revolves around making sure I get sleep, because I know that I'm a better version of myself because of it. Mm-hmm. And I know that the people around me will like me more if I am rested, and I know I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to perform better. My brain works better.
It's really, I have to interrupt you, because with my coaches, I can talk about Alzheimer's, I can talk about performance, but the way I really reel them in, like coaches, they're going to be happier. They're going to be more fun to be around. Yeah. And they're like, what time can you come?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, can you imagine? Think about this.
Yeah.
Can you imagine me on 5 hours of sleep?
I was about to say the opposite. I kind of like it when you're tired, because then you take it easy on me down at the gym. When
Right?
he's tired, then I get to back off a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, but him not going without sleep would be terrible.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And so I've watched now, my daughter, who, there's a lot of girls her age that the education piece of parents is just, it's not their fault. They're not doing it on purpose to sabotage their kids. They just truly don't understand
Correct.
What's happening, and they're giving their kids way too much leeway when it comes to sleep. And I don't want to get off a tangent, but one thing I hear a lot is, oh, my body's used to it. I can handle it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you've heard that a zillion times.
Simply not true.
My body can run off of 3 hours of sleep.
Simply not true. People have been proven they've put out calls at MIT, Stanford for any CEO to come in and do their cognitive and physical testing without enough sleep, and like nobody passes. So it's like drunk driving, unfortunately. Literally like drunk driving. You think that you're doing better than you are, but you're not reaching peak performance if you aren't sleeping. Can we talk about the adolescent thing? Because I got to get it out.
I would love to, because my Reagan is literally, as she's listening to this, she's probably just like, if she hasn't turned it off yet. So please, help us understand, and help her understand the difference between what is going to happen and the impacts that it has.
Yeah. So, for Reagan and all the young people, I have so much to say to them, and I hope for them. The first thing, I'm going to give people just 3 things to think about. There's 100, but if I can just give people 3 tools to kind of land on, I find that really helps me. The first thing is that let's talk about, there's a window of opportunity in terms of development. Across our lifespan, there are certain times that certain things happen, and those windows the edges have gotten softer, but they're still very real. And children and teens are in a very critical window of opportunity. Okay, we're just going to talk about windows of opportunity. And cognitively speaking and physically speaking, these windows, once they're shut, they're kind of shut, especially physically. I'm 5'4". It doesn't matter how much I sleep. I'm still 5'4" tomorrow, right? But when we talk about teens, for example, not getting enough sleep, 8 to 10 hours, it's been associated with a higher BMI, diabetes, and actually a shorter stature.
Oh,
and
great.
the way we know that and why that happens is because our growth hormone, which you guys I know are familiar with, is released. The majority of our growth hormone is released at night. So if our teens aren't getting enough sleep, and I talk to these basketball players who are 19 and still will probably grow a little bit, the males at least, you know, you want to be asleep so the body will release that growth hormone. Girls naturally have a growth spurt between like 10 and 14, boys a little bit later because puberty's later, about 13 to 17. But look, once these windows are closed, they're closed. There's not a reverse on this. So if you're an athlete and you want to be a college athlete, man, getting your sleep is one way that your body is going to reach its potential. So that's number one. Think about windows of opportunity and where our young people are. The second thing is that, and this, you know, I can't say with, you know, I have to leave part of my emotions at the door because I get really bummed out about it. But teens are a prime target for those who don't care about their health as much as we do. Overscheduling, cell phone, fear of missing out, you know, it's even got an acronym, FOMO. I've spoken, as I said, to thousands of young college athletes and high school as well. And many teens have false narratives around sleep, things that they'll miss out on. People will leave them out of conversations. There's just a lot of things that they believe that simply aren't true. So we have to help them work through those and overcome their vulnerabilities. And then, you know, with cell phones, you know, in terms of taking advantage of young people as prime targets, phones in the bedrooms. I'm going to say this once, and I won't come back to it because it's too powerful. But get the phones out of their bedrooms at night. If they're in their bedrooms, I just beg you to take them out because it's simply David and Goliath. Your son or daughter is no match for Verizon, Amazon, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. Facebook, the owner of Instagram, just did internal research. You may have been reading about it, but one of the things that came out of the research is that they actually have a sentence in there on one of their slides saying that they know that it's bad for them, but they can't get away from it. So your teen can't fight this battle alone, and these people are really looking to make a lot of money on their backs, and we have to be the shield. And we know better now, and I know your student athlete is going to say, but my friends all have their phones on. You're the only one. If you're the only one, you're the only one. I'm sorry about that, but I don't believe that to be true. I believe that's a narrative that they have in their head or that they're making up. You know, I think a lot of them really do believe that because the other student athlete isn't willing to say, my dad's making me turn off the phone tonight, right? So that's the second thing. The third thing is that sleep can reduce depression and anxiety for our young people. And right now, you know, I don't mean to be heavy on you, but let's just get real for a minute. The suicide rate for adolescent girls has doubled since 2007. Teens have higher rates of anxiety disorders than adults, and these numbers are going up. Right now, about 1 in 5 adults suffered from depression or anxiety last year, and 1 in 3 teens. So kind of wrap your head around that. And we know that sleep deprivation can add to anxiety and depression. And when you're a child, and let's just call it a child, right? Even if he or she is 13, 14, 15 years old, when they're waiting at nighttime for likes or response time on their cell phone, if they've got their phone in their rooms, that's just adding to that layer of anxiety. So the sword is twofold, and it's cutting in both ways, because not only is it adding to their anxiety and depression, but sleep is a very, very important time. You know, we used to use words around sleep like it's time out, it's a time for rest. It's no longer true. Through microtechnology and brain imaging, we know that sleep is an incredibly active time. And when I talk to college athletes, I show them what the brain looks like at night during REM sleep. It's incredibly active, and our muscles are really dead to the world, which is great for recovery. But student athletes, you know, they don't during the night, they need that phone shut off. They need the outside world shut off so their brain can do the important work it needs to do in this important window of opportunity. So, like, that was the most concise way that I can say there are 3 things that is more important, and it's just bigger than peer pressure. It's about a healthy life forever. It's a gift. And I'll just say one more thing on this is my father was in the Air Force, and he's a non-negotiator. And from way back, he's 88. And he would just say, lights out at 9:30. And I did scholarship classes. You call them honors now. I was captain of the soccer team, captain of the basketball team. Had a lot going on in my life, maybe student council, I don't know. And at 9:15, he'd be like, lights out in 15 minutes. And he went to bed too. And I'd be like, I don't know where my basketball shoes are. And I was a girl, I was like, I don't have my work done. I've got to get my math. And my dad would say, work it out, because in 15 minutes, the lights are going out. And I learned that everything got done the next day. Like, life went on, number 1. Number 2, he gave me the most enormous gift, because we weren't well-off people when I was growing up. We were very middle class, and we always had a car in the garage on jacks, and I know my dad had a to-do list probably taller than me. But somehow my dad went to bed, and that taught me that I can go to bed now at 58, and I hope I taught my children that they can go to bed, because that's a gift to give to your children, to show them that you can go to bed and everything is going to be okay. So for those of you who aren't modeling this behavior and staying up late to get your to-do list, I'm not sure that you're doing a favor for your children by not showing them that what my dad did is that lights out. Just lights out. We're done.
I wonder if some of that is that stigma of, this whole I'm grinding this and I'm
1,000%. 1,000%. It's old-fashioned thinking.
And
it's
it
just
doesn't make
absolutely
sense.
old-fashioned thinking now. We know better now. We have to move forward now. We have to change as the science changes. And the whole grind thing, it's simply not true anymore. We look at one of the really interesting things when I talk to baseball teams. I have so many of these from studies, but we see professional baseball players that get worse in the strike box as the season goes on. Now, they're practicing over and over and over and over, so they should be getting better as the season goes on, but it's fatigue. Mm-hmm. So the first Major League Baseball team to crack this code is going to be, really flying high, because when we can figure out this sleep issue and fatigue issue, we can take our performance to the next level.
Yeah. I think back to when we opened Vitality, and then when we built this facility, the amount of time I was working and the little sleep that I was getting, there were so many other areas of my life that took a beating for that. I wasn't as good of a dad. I wasn't as good of a husband. I wasn't as good of a boss. There were so many different areas that suffered, and I wonder what it would have been like if I just would have stayed disciplined through that time, both those times. But coming out of the Marine Corps, man, that you talk about where that stigma is. Mm-hmm. It was, hey, I can stay up for 3 days. That makes me, this tough guy that can go on patrols for 72 hours without sleep. And the reality of it is, I look back to it now, and this is what I was telling my brothers. I was really a liability at the 72-hour mark, probably the 24-hour mark, because my ability to make decisions and think clearly and critically were probably so degraded. I was doing more harm than good, but that's the stigma that we had.
Yeah, and yet most of our national disasters can be traced back to sleep deprivation. The Space Shuttle Challenger explosion, they know the engineers didn't get a good night's sleep the night before when they made a very bad decision to launch in that cold weather that morning. We know the train wreck on the Hudson, I think it was 2014, the person driving that train had been on shift work. Chernobyl, we know the Exxon Valdez, they reported being sleep deprived. So you're right. We know that we're not performing as high when we're not sleeping well. There is one thing I want to add to that, because, a lot of people, I hope I get to come and talk to you sometime about false narratives because it's pretty powerful. But one of the false narratives that people from our generation say, sleep when you're dead. I only have so much time, right? But sleep deprivation leads to a shorter lifespan. So that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So you think that you're getting more hours if you stay up, but simply not true, especially if you spend the last 10 years of your life in memory care. You really aren't there for your family the way you think that you're going to be there for your family if you stay up and do more from them. It's, I can't blame people because a lot of this isn't intuitive, but it's, we know it now. So we have to do a little bit better.
The thing that opened my eyes, I'm a very analytical, I think I need to see it on paper. And I had a bunch of guys and ladies that were wearing these wearables, this Whoop band. And I said, man, I don't know if I want to deal with that. And then I started paying attention to some of the feedback it was giving in the sleep side. I said, wow, that's kind of interesting. I've always been curious to be how much sleep I'm actually getting. And Philip and I were talking about this. So what this will tell us is it gives you your baseline sleep, and then it adds, there's some algorithm for how much strain you have during the day, and then your sleep debt, which is very interesting. So if you get 5 hours of sleep one night, it might add, 90 minutes to your next day's sleep, and then it compounds and gets worse and worse. But what I realized, and I was very in tune with the principles, but people are so enamored by, okay, well, I need 8 hours of sleep. I was in bed for 8 hours, so I got 8 hours of sleep.
Oh, no.
The reality is, when I get 8 hours of sleep, I'm in bed for 9 hours and 30 or 9 hours and 40 minutes. Most of us, especially as we get older, we're going to get up and go to the bathroom 1 or 2 times at night. We're going to toss and turn. If you don't have, I've built my room into the most ideal, cold, dark. There's no light. We have a little sound machine in there. It's perfect. There are a lot of people that sleep in like a well lit, that have, sounds and things that'll keep them up, and they're maybe in bed for 8 hours, but they're only getting 6.5 hours of actual sleep, and it just continues to, and then now you're behind, and it snowballs into this insurmountable. We laugh about it sometimes with Philip because, when we look at his sleep need, it's like he'll be coaching at 6 o'clock, and his Whoop open up and say,
Start getting ready for bed.
Your
I'm
bedtime.
I got another class to coach. What do you mean get ready for bed?
It's 6:28 p.m. And it's telling him, hey, if you want to get the amount of sleep that you need tonight, it's time to go to bed. And I was telling Reagan, I said, hey, I promise you, the first sports team that understands whatever the wearable is, that starts to reward people because you can tell if Philip has 2 or 3 beers, we can see it on the band. I said the first team that decides that this is important, it's going to be game over.
Yeah. Because
now we can see it. We can. I know if you're paying attention, and so I got Reagan one of these, and I'm paying her to get good sleep. I think
That's good.
My bachelor's in psychology, I'm about 8 years short of Tracy's master's, and she's probably like, well, it's the last thing you should do is reward
it's all right.
you.
It's all right. Yeah, it's
but
all right.
That's just, I'm so obsessed with trying to get her to understand, hey, you need to focus on this, and here's what you can see when you don't get sleep. Here's what this is doing. It's so that's kind of where I think a lot of people have this misunderstanding with the amount of sleep they're actually getting.
Yeah, so you're right. The Whoop is called, wearable technology, the same as a Fitbit or any other technology device. I have just a couple things to say. One is that I think it's an amazing tool, wearable technology. It gives people an awareness of things like recovery and strain and heart rate and blood flow, and that's all great. I will say that the Whoop band or wearable technology is not for everybody, and that it can be anxiety producing if people have an obsessive personality. The Whoop band actually, it's come out pretty good in the research as far as compared to the real sleep studies, but it has in at least one study been 30 minutes. It shows they're sleeping 30 minutes a night more than they are. So just keep that in the back of your head. In terms of your question about people, well, I slept 8 hours. The other thing I think about wearing wearable technology people have to be aware of is that you can't get lost in the numbers and not see how you're feeling, see how your blood work is, see how your mood is, see how many times you're getting sick in the year. One thing I tell let's say I have a D1 basketball team. I just talked to them 2 weeks ago, guys, and, they really should be getting probably 10 hours of sleep a night. They're working out, they're lifting, they're practicing, and then they're taking 5, engineering classes, at the same time. And they really need to be looking about 10 hours. What'll happen with people with wearable technology, like you said, they'll say, look, I got 8 hours of sleep. That's all fine and good. I tell my basketball guys, as long as you don't need 9.5. Because this is a problem. If somebody's getting 8 hours on the Whoop, but it's taking a forklift to get them out of bed in the morning, these numbers aren't adding up. So people have to, take this as a tool and then put it into their how they're feeling and not lose track of, I went and had my blood work done. For some reason, my cholesterol's high. I can't get my blood pressure down. I've been kind of sad lately. I'm worrying more than I usually do. And my alarm goes off and I hit snooze 3 times. Man, you got to recalibrate because it's not working for you, right? So when people say, I got 8 hours, that's a good starting place. But how are you performing?
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think, and we've seen this where it does cause anxiety for some people. They get obsessed with it.
Yes.
I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's a tool that will hopefully open people's eyes to realize, okay, if my target is 8 hours, then I just need to, and I'm not a super efficient sleeper according to what the Whoop says. It makes sense. Like I felt like I was up quite a bit. Okay, cool. Maybe I wear it for a month or 2 months, and then I go back to understanding I should wake up and feel good if I go to bed. But hopefully that is the trigger to because it is difficult for people to go to bed when that clock says 8 anything. If it's 8:50,
sure,
for some reason, and it's
I go to 10. I'm good. And
then now all of a sudden, we coach once a week here, and it's very interesting to look at the data on our phones because the morning that I coach, it's very different because we're up at 3:45 in the morning, and even if you go to bed at 8:30, you're still quite a bit behind. So I think it's such an eye opener to get people to at least recognize, okay, I can't fool myself anymore because this is going to tell me at least get me close to how far off I am.
Like it's saying tonight, my recommended time to just be in bed is 9 hours and 56 minutes. It's saying I need 8 hours and 20 minutes of sleep. There's a baseline, a sleep debt, all that stuff. But I need to be in bed almost 10 hours, it's saying, based off my history, to get my 8 hours and something.
Okay, so let's go backwards for a minute because I think it's really important. I'm talking to 2 men here, but I'm a 58-year-old woman, and because I study lifespan, I have to understand things about menopause and things about puberty and all these life changes. And you're going to have a lot of women, for example, in the gym that premenopausal, postmenopausal, it's a very difficult time when it comes to sleep. And I'm sitting in front of you, right? And so that's where I like to really go back to my feeling about having sleep as a relationship. Because it doesn't put pressure on any one night. It puts pressure on being clear about your intentions. It's about respect, I respect sleep. I really respect sleep. If I have a bad night, sometimes I'm up like a baby at 1, 3, and 5. I can't tell you why I'm up. I know why I'm up. It's in my brain, it's estrogen. It's a drop in hormones. I understand that. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, and people need to not beat themselves up. That being said, if their relationship is bad for whatever reason with sleep, they need to talk to their doctors because there are things that can happen. Sometimes you have a medical issue. Like I tell my college students, that I talk to, they come up afterwards and man, I wish you could see what I see because it's hard. It's so hard. They come up and they just line up and everyone tells me, they come to see me, I can't sleep. I can't sleep at night. All right, man, let's not beat yourself up. Let's try to get to the bottom of it. Let's get the low-hanging fruit. Let's see if there's a medical issue. whether it's depression, it's anxiety, it's acid reflux disease, it's sleep apnea. I talk to football players, right? They're big guys. Some of them have reflux at a very young age. And so sleep, the reason I say a relationship is you have to look at it not just day to day, but really systemically. And if you have a listener that goes to your gym or, your neighbor, whoever's listening, and they're like, well, I just don't sleep. Okay, 2 things. One, that's your canary in a coal mine. Let's see what is wrong. Let's talk to your doctor. And then the other thing is, let's try to extend your lifespan. Let's try to keep you from getting Alzheimer's disease. It's time to act now if you're someone's listening. And I just think that, think of it as a relationship. And that's a way to kind of be easy on yourself, I think.
How do you feel about sleep aids?
I'm all about them.
Okay. So talk to me about that.
Yeah.
What are you all about?
I'm all about it.
Because I'm curious.
Okay. So knowing what I knew, man, when I hit, my mom was losing her mind, and there's no other way to say it. And I had a teenager, and I had a 12 or 10-year-old, and man, I wasn't sleeping. I was in Nightmare City, right? And I went to my doctor, and I said, give me the good stuff. Don't give me this melatonin crap. I want
give me the hard stuff.
the good stuff. Yeah. And I needed it 15 minutes ago because I can't risk going through I can't risk my children going through that. So I'm dead serious about this relationship, right? That being said, there's a lot of stuff before there. Melatonin, the research is mixed on melatonin. It works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. So if somebody's telling you melatonin, you're still not sleeping, don't worry about it.
If it does work for you, is that something you just...
Absolutely.
You're
beauty.
good with that, doing
Take
it every
those
night.
gummies and rock on.
I had so that we were talking about the Whoop earlier.
Yeah.
There's a journal they have in there now. So when you wake up in the morning, it asks you if you did any of these things prior the day or the day before.
Yeah.
And it gave me a stat. It said, we've noticed in the past 30 days, whatever, every time you've reported that you've taken melatonin before bed, your REM sleep increases by almost 23%.
Nice.
It would tell me that based off if I hit yes or no that I took melatonin that night.
And you wouldn't be worried about becoming dependent on something like
No,
like
melatonin's a natural hormone.
Okay.
It's already running through us.
So what about other sleep aids?
So let's talk about other sleep aids. Okay. So
after you've done your due diligence, after you've
got the
peeled
low
back some
hanging
of the layers.
fruit. Yeah. You've done all that stuff and you just aren't sleeping. I mean, if I go to my doctor, I already know all this stuff. I can tell you I've done everything there is, right? And but what the sleep aid can do is a couple things. I'm not pushing sleep aids on people, but I am pushing sleep on people. And the one thing, if it's not working for you, you just can't get a sleep. Sometimes what a sleep aid can do, either over the counter or prescription, obviously be in contact with your doctor about this. But for me, it made it clear to my body that we won't be up at 2 a.m. eating cheese sticks and watching Seinfeld. We just won't be. We'll be in bed. And sometimes it's too hard to stay in bed if you're not, sleeping and you're tossing and turning. So what a sleep aid can do is it can prevent some bad habits from taking place, because you'll have people that say, well, I just don't sleep at night, so at 2 a.m. is when I get my most work done. And that becomes their MO, right? So sometimes a sleep aid can get people not starting bad habits. You can be on it for a short period of time until the storm passes, and then hopefully get back naturally to sleep. Sleep aids are much more targeted than they used to be. They're not as, narcotic, knock you out. If it's working right for you, it should just kind of help you get a good night's sleep. It doesn't restore your brain the way natural sleep would, but it does keep you in bed. And for a lot of people, that's important because they'll get up and they'll eat a lot of bad food. After 11 p.m., we don't make the same food choices as we make prior to 11 p.m. So a lot of people that aren't sleeping, they're getting up eating.
Which is probably feeding the fire and fanning the flame of, well, now I've just eaten something, probably carbohydrates or sugar or something, and now no wonder we can't go back to sleep now.
Right. When we're sleep deprived, we tend to choose more high-fat, high-sugar foods. When we have more sleep, we're into more lean meat, fruits, and vegetables. Our brain actually chooses differently based on the amount of sleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, then like you said, it becomes a negative spiral because you're up eating, late at night. Maybe if I just eat something, I'll go back to sleep. And then you wake up, you're feeling bad about yourself, your blood sugar's off track, your system's just not working right, and now you're not sleeping the next night. So when it comes to sleep aids, you want to work up the chain, you want to be in contact with your provider, but I think that there's a place for sleep aids, and I've taken Ambien before. I've taken, NyQuil before, or, the sleep disease, whatever. I've taken melatonin. I mean, it's a relationship that over my lifespan, I've been at different places at different times. I was an engineer at one point. I was an engineering student and a D2 athlete. I was staying up too late. Yeah, it's a real life situation. You have to be able to meet people where they are, and you have to say, what's going on? And nobody wants to say it out loud. And that's where I see the young people just lining up and saying, I can't sleep because I'm so worried about everything. So it really doesn't do any good to tell that student, you need to be asleep. End of story. I'm going to go academic on you, but you guys look like you can handle it this afternoon. There's a theory. It's called Bronfenbrenner's systems theory, and you really need to apply it when you're asking people to make a change, because what it says is that in the middle of the storm that we each are living in, there's a circle around each of us, a bigger circle and a bigger circle and a bigger circle. And all those circles are circles of influence on us, whether we go to the gym, whether we smoke pot, I don't know, whatever, right? All these behaviors that we have. And so when we're looking at changing somebody's behavior, like sleep, for example, we have to consider all of the influences that are pushing against that person: cultural, Instagram, Snapchat, peer groups. Who is your student athlete, if they're in high school, who's your high school athlete friends with? Are they staying up all night? And if that person's not responding at midnight, are they blacklisting them the next day? We have to give people real tools, especially our young people, to use. We have to talk to other parents, and we have to say, hey, I don't know how you feel about this, but we're making the phones go off at 9:30 in our house. You'll be surprised how many people say, yeah, I've been trying to do that too. Great. Let's stick together on that one, right? So we need to speak to other people. We have to understand that each person who's trying to make a change is not doing so in isolation. They have a lot of pressures against them, and that's what I try to help our young people with.
What would I'll use Brooke instead of Reagan as an example.
He might not be happy with me.
Probably not. What would you say to Brooke when he's growing up and he just says, hey, Ma, I can't get to sleep. You want me to go to sleep at X amount of time, and I just can't get to sleep.
Yeah.
I would think that it's a learned behavior that you have to kind of, you can't wait. And could you say that it's the same as being thirsty? If you wait till you're thirsty, it's too late. If you wait till you're tired and you're just kind of pass out, isn't it too late? Shouldn't you be able to lay down and put yourself to sleep?
Okay. So I'll answer that in two ways. My first thought is that, and what I found with my own children, once again, we're animals, and we know how to do this. We really and truly know how to do this if we just let ourselves. And I found my kids were exhausted. In our household, they could only go out one night of the weekend in high school. They could choose which one it was. You're going to go to football and then go to McDonald's afterwards. We live in a very rural area, so there's not a lot to do. But McDonald's was one of the things. Then you're not going out Saturday night. Saturday night, you're at home, because that's the night you're going to really rest up. And that's not popular, by the way. But that's what we did. And what I found is that night off, my kid was on the couch at 7:30, just asleep, just dead to the world, right? They're very, very tired. That's the one thing. The other thing is, let me talk to you in terms of, since I'm a lifespan person, in terms of babies. So when we have a baby, the baby knows how to sleep, and intuitively we know how to put the baby to sleep. That's very cool about us as animals. So the baby's born, and it comes to be nighttime, and we rock the baby, and then we put the baby in the crib, and we rub the baby's back, and we speak softly, and we turn the lights down. And we do that every night at 7, right? And then we'll read a story, and we give the bottle. We know to do a routine. We know this intuitively. We're genetically programmed. We give the offspring a routine, and then we put the offspring to bed, right? So what happens as the world, again, think of the systems theory, as the world starts pushing in on our offspring, we no longer have time for that routine, right? Get your homework done, get it to bed, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we've lost what we knew to be true. We know that there needs to be a bedtime routine for all of us, each of us. I'm like a Broadway musical at night. I have like a choreographed routine that cannot be changed before I go to bed, right? To just give the thing even a hope to work. And teens are the same thing. We have to tell them, hey, figure out what you need to do before you go to bed. And if you're going to bed at 9:30, we need to start it now. And they're going to say, and first of all, I got to tell you, I talked to high schools, private high schools outside of Washington, D.C., and you don't understand by sitting there in Charlotte, North Carolina, the pressure that these students are under to succeed and go to the best schools. And then I have to come back and talk to the faculty, and then I have to have a parents' coffee, and we have to systemically help them to understand we've got to give these students a routine. We've got to give them a chance to settle down. We have to help them settle down. We have to help them disconnect from the rest of the world because we know how to do this. And that's the interesting part. We know how to do it, but we don't listen to ourselves. We don't believe in ourselves anymore. We don't believe in this ability to do this thing correctly. And that's what I would just encourage people. When you know better, do better. Don't worry about the popularity of it. You know, life's over quick and you kind of go out alone, so don't worry about that. Just if you know the right thing, start implementing it in your household. Give your kid a chance to have a healthy life. And once they get to 18 and they go off to college, they go off to, be an adult, they can do whatever they want. But that window of opportunity, try to help them through that. It's David and Goliath. You're going to have a hard time pushing back, but at least give them another soldier in the war, against the people that are trying to make money off of them.
Mm-hmm. It's got to feel good. It's reassuring to hear all this, obviously, but then just knowing Brooke, it's got to be reassuring for you, which even gives you even more confidence in what you're talking about because, the guy's a genius. He's super smart, 10-pound brain. He's a great athlete. He's one of the few guys that I don't lose sleep over when he beats me on a rowing workout, But he held back that his dad.
Yeah, he did.
He held that little tidbit.
Yeah.
It was a few months before I was like, okay, you could have led with that. Yeah. But he let me suffer a little bit. But you see, and then you also hear him talk about, man, I'm so glad my mom and dad did this because I'm telling you, as a parent, especially with daughters, it's like, man, my kids don't want to be, my oldest doesn't really think I'm cool anymore. And now all of a sudden I'm exacerbating that by 1,000 by telling her she's got to do all these things that no one else is doing. So it's very reassuring when I can imagine that at some point the crossover is going to come and she's going to be like, gosh, I am glad you were a sleep Nazi growing up, because right now
I don't think there'll be a time where she'll say, I wish I didn't get as much sleep when I was growing up. I really doubt that's going to happen. And that's what you need to hang your hat on.
Yeah.
And, she only has a certain amount of time to reach this peak each year. And with her growth, with her cognitive development, and once those doors are closed, they're kind of hard to pry open. We know through disability studies that those edges have gotten softer, but it's a lot easier right now to have her develop as high as she can at the right windows of opportunity. So I don't think she's going to be coming back to you. I think the important part, though, for parents is you have to ask, tell me what's going on, what's hard for you about this, and really listen and realize that that's their world and that's really real. And, in my household, I'm a mom. I had to hear that nobody else is doing this. We're not going to have any friends. Everybody's going to make fun of us. I had all of it. I had to hold.
Yep. That's what I hear. Uncle Philip's about to have a 13-year-old come live with them here in a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay. Philip's gonna put her to bed too.
I'm going to bed too, so whatever. Yeah.
Well, listen, Tracy, what I hope we can do is circle back up at some point in the future and talk about some of these the 7 misconceptions
Yes.
that are out there, because there's so many. And I think that'd be a really interesting. I think this is something that we joke about it a lot. Whether we have 5 people listen or 5,000, people need to be force-fed this knowledge and this education about sleep, because we are the only ones that can impact that next generation. And if we're not teaching it to them, who's going to? Because you're dealing with the coaches, you're dealing with the athletes. They're the ones that are violating this more than anything, because they're trying to squeeze. Who has time to sleep when they got to practice, they got to study, they got, So it's got to be us that brings this message, and the more people you can arm with this, you have such a amazing knowledge base. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of this with us.
Yeah, super excited. And if people have questions, just funnel them through you. And if there's something I want me to come back and talk about,
I would love that.
Yeah.
Do you have is there a website that where can people find more about you?
Tracy'sHealthyLiving.com, TRACYS healthyliving.com.
Okay.
And there's a way to contact me there.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you very much, Tracy. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks for listening. Till next time, this is the Built by Vitality podcast.
And go to bed. Go to bed.
Time for bed.
Time for bed.